Hello, everybody. This is Jeanne-Marie Paynel, broadcasting live tonight from actually Paris, France. I'm on the last end of my trip here. And Simone, hello.
Hello, I'm Simone Davies, and I am joining you from Amsterdam. So we're both in Europe at the moment, and we have lots of people joining in from all around the world. We have Jenny, for example. Hello, Jenny. Where are you calling in from? You're welcome to join the chat room. If you're on a desktop or a laptop, you can generally comment and ask questions during the call. If you're on an iPad, it doesn't often come up. So yeah, maybe switch over to a laptop if you can. It's always fun to Basel in Switzerland. We're going to be European tonight.
Yes. So we have a lot of questions tonight. I think this topic hit home for a lot of people. And I'm kind of going to be the moderator because Simone and I were actually talking when we saw each other and had some good face-to-face conversation earlier this summer in Prague. And she shared with me all of her nonviolent communication training, which was fascinating to me and why we also chose this topic. So do you want to get into the questions, or do you have some announcements to make?
Well, I think a little introduction to nonviolent communication might help to start with,
definitely.
So you kind of see the framework that we're working from. And it's not just nonviolent communication, to be honest. It's like just all the things that I feel in ways of communicating with people that seem to complement a Montessori approach. Because like we've talked about, if anyone's followed the live shows before, like Montessori isn't just about the activities that you do with your kids, it's more about how you are and how you live together. And we're actually showing up as our best selves so that our children learn from us how we solve conflicts and how we speak to others. And today's topic is how we work with others, how we express our parenting choices to family, to friends, to people in the playground, and those kind of things. And it's a thing that parents often talk about in my classes, that they're really struggling to communicate with their partner, or that their parents look after their kids, but they do things differently, and how's that going to work and affect their child?
Yes. Yes.
So I think the good news, though, is that children do learn that there's different rules for different people. And I think in the big picture, most grandparents, friends are all trying to do the right thing. You know, actually, no one's trying to mess up your child. And so they're doing the best they can. So sometimes when we can just come from that place of compassion, that actually no one's wrong, they might have a different view on things, but no one's wrong. So actually, we've talked about it before. When we give empathy to a toddler, they're not trying to say, I'm being really aggressive and I'm going to steal that toy and be really naughty. They just see a toy and they really want it. And if you have an argument with your partner about whether you should go to Paris or Basel for your holiday, if they think you should go to Paris and you think you should go to Basel, you're both right. But like, what do you really want out of Paris? Oh, you want the excitement of a city. And someone who wants to go to Basel might want the rest of the nature, something like this. You've got nature nearby, I'm pretty sure, in Switzerland. So then you can kind of think, well, is there a way that we can both have those needs met? Hi, Katka. She's joining us from Slovakia. So that's where we're kind of coming from in this. It's kind of like seeing that everyone has their point of view, and how can we maybe be like, often we get focused on one strategy. For example, my partner doesn't wash up. I mean, we're not talking about children even, but these are just conflicts that come up.
Right.
So you're really attached to the idea that he's not sharing that part of the household tasks. And that's just one strategy. And actually, what's your need? Is it to be appreciated, or is your need that you actually need some time off, or that you are done with cooking, or you could have a need for a whole lot of things like respect. And so it's actually starting to go deeper into there's hundreds of ways to solve the problem. Like, you could get a friend to come over and cook together and wash up together, or sometimes you wash up and sometimes your partner wash up, or sometimes you just choose to eat out of something that doesn't need to be washed up, or you decide to save up and get a dishwasher, or you leave all the dishes and wash them up once a week, or you throw away plates and then you think, actually, no, I really want to care for the environment. So then you actually, anyway, I'm just saying there's hundreds and hundreds of choices.
Right. But I think, I mean, you made a point about, disagreeing and sometimes, I guess, not agreeing with the other person. To me, it gets tricky when you feel offended. When you feel offended by the other person, maybe's reasoning or their way of acting. So how would you deal with that in a way that you don't take it so personally?
Yeah, it is taking a bit of distance from it and often reflecting back to them, because they're not meaning to attack you usually. They're actually just expressing it, probably maybe not well, but they're expressing that, like, for example, if they say, you should really do this with your child, like a grandparent giving some advice,
right.
They're actually just saying, this is a way you could do it. So then you could say, oh, are you really worried that they're not getting enough sleep? Or are you really worried that they're not eating enough vegetables? Or are you really worried? And actually just really trying to find out what they're, going back to them as opposed to taking it on personally.
Right.
Hello to Peter as well from Vienna. We really are all in Europe. Okay, come on, everyone else, wake up. Yeah, so I think we'll get into it more as we go through some of the examples. But it's a little bit like when you get into a control battle with your toddler. You can take it personally, like he thinks I'm a bad mom, and like we're really like I'm right and he's wrong. Or you can find a way that you can kind of work together. It's not necessarily always about compromise. It actually can be about amazing solutions. And with young toddlers, it might be that you are proposing some ideas, but you can also say, oh, do you have any ideas how that I can have my rest and you can run around and, be crazy as well. And then we can apply the same principles with adults as well, and hopefully come to much more peaceful solutions.
Good.
We'll see. So hopefully that's a good start.
It is. So let me read some of these wonderful questions that we have received so far. So we have Ella from London. Let me see, is this really the first one?
Actually, there's one from Katka above, and Katka's on the call.
Yes, okay.
And Katka, very excitingly, has just opened their school. Do you want to tell them about that too?
Well, she does say that she's establishing a new little Montessori center in her town of, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's in Slovakia. I don't know. And she did send a photo gallery, so maybe we can share that later on. But her question basically is how to best communicate a Montessori lifestyle and a choice to bring up children this way to parents who have a lot of prejudices around about Montessori and about this feeling that it's a style that allows us to just let children do whatever. So it's I guess the question is, how do you get them to think differently about Montessori? And it actually brings us to another question that was about how to explain Montessori in a very simple manner to parents. And the other part of her question is, and how to encourage parents to invest financially so their children have a Montessori education, though they know it is something more expensive than traditional schools.
Cool. And before I start, I can see that Morven's jumped on from Scotland and Olga's joining us from Amsterdam. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's super fun. I know there's other people who are on the call, but they're obviously not in the chat room, but it's fun to say hi to them as they join. So yeah, it's communicating about Montessori, and I think there are a lot of misconceptions about Montessori. So perhaps would you be open to hearing about what Montessori actually is? Because I think that some people think that Montessori is where children can do whatever they want and the parents don't have any control. And on the other hand, I also hear people say, oh, Montessori is very strict and children are only allowed to do this with materials and they're not allowed to be creative. And actually, Montessori is somewhere much more in the middle. And we've talked about this before a little bit when we talk about freedoms and limits, because we give children a lot of freedom to explore. We want to encourage their curiosity. And on the other side, we want to balance it and make them grow up to be responsible human beings who care for themselves, for the environment, and for others. So the Montessori approach is actually a way of encouraging children's curiosity by allowing them freedom to explore at their own pace within fixed limits, that there's not so many rules that they want to fight and struggle against them, but they're very clearly set so that the parent doesn't have to shout to set these limits. They can just very calmly say, I can't let you hit, but please tell me you're frustrated about such and such. So we will definitely stop hitting and inappropriate behavior, but we are happy for them to, in the classroom, for example, explore any materials that they want. They don't need to wait for someone to be standing at the front of the classroom and tell them what they think they need to learn today. So I think that's really...
And I think an important aspect of explaining Montessori to families today is we have the benefit of having all of the kind of the scientific backing that we have now with the neuroscience and everything, of really letting children explore and concentrate and all of that. So there's really beautiful material nowadays to really help us back that up, that it's not just some, philosophical way of treating children. It really is beneficial to their brain development. And I think that's really important to share with parents, because then they're understanding that it is really for, to help their children's full potential develop.
Yeah. And I think sometimes just showing by example your own children that they're respectful but they're curious kids, that they have interesting conversations, or that they look after things in their environment, they can be really powerful. So if you have, for example, a Montessori environment, just invite people to come along and do observations, or come and have an open afternoon where people can come and see the space. And the moment you walk into a Montessori classroom and you see the care that's been put into the space, it just sells itself as an idea. It's like, oh, wow, I want to play here. I can imagine being a kid and wanting to touch all this because I want to touch it and I'm a grown-up. Imagine if I had this learning environment. And then they see how you talk with the child, and that it's very respectful and not just like baby talking or only talking to the parent, but really talking to the whole family. And right. I think often... I'm not really a bossy person by nature, so I don't say you need to do Montessori, but I really show it by the way I live Montessori. And I think that can be the most powerful. So I think that's how I would kind of convince them that that's what Montessori is. I'd give them a very simple explanation and address their concerns, that it's not where kids have complete control. Like, I'm the parent and I'm in charge when I need to be, but within that, I'm going to let them have a lot of space to explore.
Yes.
Before we get on to the next question, do you want to say hello to the new people on the call too?
So we have Barbara from Portugal and Tanya from Canada, Catalina from Romania. Once again, I'm blown away by the international community that we gather on these live shows that we have a lot of fun doing with Simone. So welcome, everybody.
Amy. Yeah, and Amy is also joined from Amsterdam. I think that's one more that I might have missed. Hey, cool.
All righty.
And so the second part of the question, though, was also about investing financially in a Montessori approach.
Yes.
And my personal opinion is that you can't make anyone spend their money any particular way. So all you can do is to show them the benefits of your approach, and show them maybe the limitations of what traditional education might be. So, for example, you could direct them to TED Talks like Ken Robinson, who talks about how traditional education limits creativity. And then they realize, oh, yeah, what do I want education to mean for my child? And actually, there's no price you can put on some of this stuff. And I know myself, we had limited amounts of money, but I did still invest what limited money I had into going to a Montessori playgroup when my son was small, because I got so much value out of it, and it really impacted the way I ended up parenting and going into my career soon after as well. So it definitely is like, yeah, people will, if they can, find the way. I know people sometimes can't afford to come to my classes, and the grandparents then pay because they see value in it as well. So yeah, it's money, it's difficult, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely important. And I think, parents always want the best for their children. So if they understand that Montessori is kind of on the higher end and it's a priority and so forth, they will definitely find the funds and invest and never regret it.
I never regret it. And I wonder even, Katka, if there is an option to, like, I run a playgroup in Amsterdam where people come once a week with their child, and they learn about the Montessori approach so they can put it into practice at home. And that might be more affordable for someone to be able to pay for a once a week 2-hour class, as opposed to 5-day-a-week program that's, an investment in their time, and often they're half-day programs which affects your work and that kind of thing. So I even wonder if, just again, blue sky thinking, how are there so many ways that you can introduce it? Could you give introduction to Montessori evenings and help people realize the importance of Montessori that way? I run them twice a year for free, and I have range of people come. Some people from my classes, but really people from all over Amsterdam just interested in saying, what is this about the Montessori approach? And many afterwards are like, oh, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, and I do a similar where it's just a once a month meetup group. It's free, and it's just to answer people's questions about Montessori, and it's been wonderful to a lot of families to discover. So a great way to share the message there as well. Yeah, wonderful. So I will go on to the next question, which is from Ella. And Ella tells us a little bit about her situation, and she has a 2-year-old, and she says that this topic couldn't have come at a better time because she needs to have the talk with her parents, which I found really cute.
It's not the talk about the birds and the bees then.
No. So she, my parents have felt bossed around by me about parenting, and felt sometimes like I'm just telling them, and don't do this, don't do that. Right, for my daughter when she was tiny, and they had to suddenly learn about baby-led weaning, for example, which now they are convinced and love it. But I don't think my parents ever thought consciously about their approach to parenting with me, apart from trying to show love. So she's just wanting to know how to really, I guess, help her parents understand what she wants for her daughter and what she feels is important in the way that she is educating her daughter. How would you suggest having those kind of conversations without feeling like the other party is feeling attacked, basically?
So my first thought was to say, I'd really like to have a talk to you about some of the parenting choices we're making. Can we find a good time to chat, or would it be okay if we talked about it when you're over on Friday night? Because if you just get them over, they're having a nice time, and you bring it up unexpectedly, they're not even prepared for it. But if they already know, that can already soften a blow a little bit, like, oh, okay, I'm curious what that might be. And then at the Montessori Congress, we heard about a really lovely nonviolent communication technique, which is about listening. And you can say, have you got 20 minutes, right? And first you allow them to talk about whatever they want to talk about for 5 minutes, and you actively listen, and you look at what they're really wanting and needing and feeling, so that you can understand that. Then the next 5 minutes, you reflect back what you heard about how you saw them react and how they feel about it and what they need. And then then you swap roles, and for the next 5 minutes, you can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about, and then they can reflect back for 5 minutes. And 5 minutes is a long time, and you can talk about anything, and you might find that you actually start to find commonalities and connection. And actually, even though they do things differently, like you say, they do want to love your child, just like they grew up. Also, even if we don't agree with all the parenting choices that our parents made, I think we all turned out kind of okay. So I think that we are really trying to perfect this and make it much easier for our children. But I think we're privileged and lucky to have the parents who have raised us in the first place, and accept that not everything's perfect. I'm not perfect, and I don't claim ever to be. I don't think that probably, Ella, you do everything perfectly either. So it's acknowledging that I'm sure that we can find some ways. So that's like the basic background that I would start with. Maybe a listening exercise. That might be some way to start. Or really choose what's important for you. Like, is it their bedtime routine? This is how we really want it to go. Or is it that you don't want them to shout at her? Like, pick 1 or 2 things. But if you try to say, I need you to change exactly how you parent, be a grandparent to my child, they're going to find it way too much. So you might just want to pick specific things that they can work on. Oh, there's a really useful article I found on Good Job, and we're really trying to instead describe what they're doing, if that's something that they really go overboard with. Or perhaps they're like being overprotective and not letting them climb, and they need to climb, and so what would be appropriate ways to allow climbing? And you could brainstorm together rather than just telling them. Say, I really think it's like, I know that you get worried when she's climbing on the couch, and then she's saying, I need to climb. So how could we find a way, like, oh, you want to take it to the playground? Awesome, that's a great idea. Why don't you take it to the playground on Wednesday afternoon? And, this kind of idea. It's more, instead of telling them everything, get them involved. Just like we would work with children, we also want to work with these parents to get ideas.
And it's funny when you say that, because when you were describing it, it's exactly what we've talked about, how we talk with children. So, it's true. It really is. It's about, reflecting back and giving them choices. And you also made a point that is important to note, is to pick your battles, because there's so many little different details that are going to maybe annoy us, or that we would do differently and such. Go with the important main lines, and kind of, sometimes let go of some of the details. Know that you do it a certain way in your home, and your friends or your family are going to do it differently in your home, and that's okay. As long as it's not damaging your child, it's going to be okay, because children do need to have also different ways of doing things. So, it's like Simone said, is just pick one or two things to work on at a time.
Yeah. And then the other thing is what we often do is we start criticizing our partner or our grandparent for doing the wrong thing, when we're trying not to say no to the kids. And actually they're picking up more from how we behave in the world. So we can't have those conversations in front of the kids, or we need to find other ways to talk with them. Like translating for them is a really useful one. So like, it sounds like, say you're having meal together and they start saying, and they're correcting how they eat, or something that you just wouldn't agree with normally. Then I could say, it sounds like grandma thinks it's really important for you to keep the food on the plate. And you're kind of translating it in a nice way, just like I would translate for a toddler who's pulling a toy out of their hands. Yeah?
Yes, no, perfect.
You're
perfect.
nodding. It's hilarious.
And I did want to make a point too about our parents' parenting. I think it's important to, like you say, we're lucky to have been parented by our parents, and they did the very best they could with the tools that they had. And that as grandparents, they also have the best intentions in mind. So it's true that maybe parenting has evolved, and now we are parents that are very informed and have a lot of information at our fingertips. And so it's changed all of that. A lot of our parents just parented with what they had with their tools. So important to also remind them of that, and to let them know that you're not criticizing them or their ways, but that, hey, you've got this new information you just were reading about and you want to share it.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So again, this is Maëlle de Leon, who wants how to explain succinctly what Montessori is. And I think we touched on that.
I did say one more thing about that though.
Yes.
How I normally explain it as well is that idea that the Dr. Montessori says it's coming from a different approach. It's an alternative. This is my 1 minute explanation of Montessori.
Good.
So I would say to someone, it's an alternative education system. So instead of us having the teacher at the front of the classroom saying, this is what you need to learn today, like everyone, are you all ready to learn the letter A today? Yeah. Instead, the materials are laid out in the classroom so that the children can learn and discover for themselves in concrete ways with their hands. And there's mixed age groups so that the younger children are learning and observing from the older ones, and the older ones are modeling and helping the younger children, so that you have one teacher who will go around and help children individually if they need help. Older children can also help, and it's much more child-led, and the children make discoveries and they still get through all they need to learn, but at their own pace, on their own timeline. That kind of thing that's kind of what I say. And people go, oh, right, yeah, that makes sense.
And I would add that they learn at their own pace, because we are all born with the innate sense of wanting to learn and needing to adapt to our time, place, and culture. So that it's something that's just very strong within us, and it doesn't need to be forced onto little people. They're wanting to learn. They're wanting to explore. So if we can be their guides, it's going to happen with pure goodness. So yes.
Cool.
Yes.
There's one other thing about language that might be useful, because I don't think it comes up in any specific question, but the language we use when we're talking to someone, there's some language that will make people be more receptive and other language that will close people down. And if someone feels attacked, you're going to completely close them down. So things like those, it's basic communication skills, but it's I feel this rather than you made me feel that, because you can only change yourself. You can't be responsible for how, but they also can't deny it. It's like they did this and then I felt that. And like we talk about observation, about observing your child like a video camera, you can also observe like a situation and try and describe it like a video camera. So instead of saying you left me alone, that is very much you feel attacked. You're like, oh, I was standing by myself when you left, or something. There's kind of a way of wording things that you're more like a video camera, something that a video camera can record, as opposed to when you start saying just or disappointed. Yeah, so all of these words, be very careful. There's a great sheet that you get if you do a nonviolent communication course. And on this side, this is feelings. And in each of these boxes, for example, it says, these are my calm feelings, like relaxed, serene, tranquil. It gives you such good vocabulary. I feel lively, or I feel confused, I feel torn, hesitant, baffled. And they're all words that don't have any negativity in them. They're just honest feelings. And so it's really useful. Maybe I can find a link to something and post it in the links later. And I'll also share the links to this school photos someone asked in the chat room for the photos. So a needs inventory. And so on the other side, the feelings, then there's a needs. So you might be wanting connection with your partner, or purpose or meaning or autonomy or honesty, harmony, play. And it helps you communicate what you actually really need. What is it that you need from the grandparents? I really want them to make, is it that you want respect? Is it that you want appreciation? Is it that you want safety for the children? Or is it that you want freedom for the children? Anyway, it helps you narrow it down a little bit.
Lovely. Yes. And that would be great if we could get a copy of that or something similar. That'd be great.
Cool.
Okay. So then, how can I help people from stopping to say no? No to my son when they don't want him to do something. And she goes on that hearing them say no to him is grating upon me. So
I know, when you all of a sudden know another way, it's really, really hard.
It is.
And I spend a lot of time around Montessori people, so I forget. And you go out into the real world and you're like, oh, that's so different. If only they could do this. Actually, I'll tell a quick anecdote because it really highlights how you can have compassion for people. I was sitting on a train trip in France in the holidays, and I was planning to do some writing on the train. So I sat down, and next to me came a beautiful mother with a 3-year-old daughter, I'm guessing, and a little baby. And then I thought, isn't that sweet? They look very nice. And I'm tapping away. And then all of a sudden they start getting into an argument. The little girl's taking off her shoes and putting them back on and climbing down and kind of getting noisier. And so the mum's obviously feeling anxious and not wanting to disturb anyone. And they're all speaking French, but you can tell exactly what's going on. And then you get the like an elderly lady across the way telling the girl as well to listen to her mother. But meantime, really, the girl has nothing to do. She's bored. She's in a train for at least 3 hours, and isn't finding it easy to sit still. She might be a more active child. She was very articulate, that's for sure. And they were getting into a battle. So after at least an hour of listening to them argue, I couldn't hold myself back anymore. And I could have told her, you can't talk to your child like that. I could have given her a lecture. And instead I thought, okay, she's having stuff. I really feel for her. So I just said, try in French to speak French, which was hilarious. Can I help you? I have children. I work with children. I'm happy to come play with her. What can I do to help you? And she's like, no, we're okay. And I'm like, are you sure? I've got a notebook. Would you like a notebook? She can write here. And I'm trying to draw a picture. And just to kind of show her that there's another way that she could be with her child, I guess. And she refused my help. But after that time, she fed the baby. And then she came around to her side and read a book with a story. And there was no more arguing. But it was getting quite violent before that. She was physically holding her in a very rough way. And it was very upsetting. So anyway, I'm not sure how we got there. But that was about Yeah, when people say no and it grates on your ears,
no.
it really does affect
So how
you.
do you help people stop saying no to your children?
So I would then translate for them again. I would say, oh, it sounds like they don't want you to climb on the table, or it sounds like they want us to keep our feet on the floor. It sounds like is quite a useful way of translating for somebody else, because you can't tell them, don't say that to my child, because then you're getting into the same thing about criticizing people. But what you're kind of trying to say is, what are they needing for? Or she really, like, say you are sitting on a train and someone criticizes you, then you could say, oh, it sounds like this lady really wants quiet and we're being too loud, So she's being aggressive at you or saying, no, be quiet. And I would translate for her and really work out what she's needing. So going back to like these needs cards.
Right. Or also, I mean, could you also model the fact that using more of the yes of what the child can do would be preferable? I mean, when we say, for example, don't run or stop running, instead we could say, use your walking feet, or let's walk on our tiptoes, or something.
That's exactly it. Yeah, you're giving the positive example. So when she says, no, don't climb on the table, we're saying, oh, it sounds like she's saying, keep our feet on the floor. So we are kind of rephrasing it into the way we'd rather hear it. Maybe at a later time, if that's a close friend, we could talk about, oh, you know how I kind of said that weird thing before? It's just because we're trying to say, like, if you say don't think of the pink elephant, we think of a pink elephant. So we're really always trying to find ways of phrasing it in what we want them to be doing, not what we don't want them to be doing.
Yes. Perfect. I have another one here from Madeline, who was very taken aback by her mother-in-law coming and criticizing the way that she was raising her child, especially if her mother-in-law, it's been 50 years since she hasn't been around babies and such. So her question really is how to respond to criticism, because there was her mother-in-law criticizing her husband, also feels that she's maybe a little too strict about the routines. She's very aware that her child needs a certain amount of sleep, and so is very dedicated to having, good sleep routines and putting her child to bed on time, but is feeling very criticized by both family and partner that maybe she's being a little too anxious over it. So how to maybe help her explain to those who are criticizing her?
I think this is a good time to talk about being assertive. So I had to learn this myself in the last few years because I'm not very good at it. I'm generally a passive person. I don't like conflict, so I'll avoid conflict. But the problem with that is that you often don't have your needs met because you're not standing up for yourself. And if you're aggressive, then people don't hear you either because you're attacking. And sometimes people go passive aggressive. They don't say anything and then they snap. So it happens in parenting even, like you let your child do too much and then you snap. So I just think it's a nice reminder in Madeline's situation that she can say what's important to her, but and express that, because if she doesn't, she's feeling criticized and she obviously has needs that aren't being met, like maybe acknowledgement that she's really doing the best for her, the daughter, and she's really spending 99% of the time, and she has done a lot of research and knows her well. But on the other hand, it's these conversations. So this is what you think and this is what I think, and how can we find a way to work together? So, you really want me to be more flexible about the time that she goes to bed, or you'd really like to spend more time with her? Is there a way that maybe you could come around earlier before I'm putting her to bed, and then we can have dinner together with the dad later? So it's kind of not saying I'm right and you're wrong. It's like we're both right. We're going to have different opinions on things. Some people will think that blue's a pretty color and some people think that red's a pretty color. That's okay. We're all allowed to have our different feelings, but how can we actually live together? I think that would be a really nice place to come to. I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit, but you can't change anyone. You can't, like, for example, if you marry someone and then say, if only he would clean up put his towels on the floor, but that is who he is, and you can change how you react to it. And you may find that if you keep your stuff really nice, then eventually he might learn it, but you can't change anyone. They need to do the work on themselves, and you need to keep working on yourself. And hopefully you can find a way. Like, I don't know if we're only going to marital disputes right now about the towels on the floor. Everyone's like, how do I get him to put the towels on the floor? But I would just have a conversation with him, like, you really like not caring about the towels on the floor, and I really like them hung up. Maybe you end up saying, yeah, do you know what? It's not a big deal. I'm going to hang them up because to me, it's more important than walking over them. Or like, I'm done with hanging them up, but I also don't want to walk over them. What are hundreds of ways can we do it? Should we have no towels? Should we, I don't know, like there's hundreds of solutions to it, and get so irritated by a towel on the floor is not worth your energy.
Not at all. Not at all. Yes. No, it's very true. Very true. And I like the fact that you encourage Madeline to be assertive, but in a respectful way, because it's true that it's important to stand your ground. You are the parent, and you have done the research, and you're feeling very strong about a certain situation or routine that you want. And it's okay to say, you can disagree, but this is important to me, and this is, what I have chosen to do, and I've done research, and that's it.
And then also, you could also say, I appreciate that you don't like the early time, but I can't let you criticize me in front of my child. You could also be very clear on that. Okay, you want to keep criticizing me? I'm just going to leave, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it when you are ready to have an adult conversation, and we won't criticize each other. Yes. You can set a boundary, because you don't want to be criticized. You don't have to be criticized. If you don't like it, don't. Right. But actually, sometimes I always say, like, people thinking different things is a good thing. It makes you challenge you. Like, oh, does it really matter? Like, actually, maybe they want, for example, one night to have a celebration, and you're saying, oh no, it's really like it's always bedtime 7 o'clock. Maybe actually you could say, oh, for one special occasion, actually it doesn't make me feel comfortable, but it's so nice for everyone else. And my child would also learn that sometimes we do things for someone else. Yeah. Yes. So I'm going to actually back down on something that's important, and I'm going to wear the consequences of them being cranky tomorrow. But that's okay, because we did it because it was a nice thing, and it's my choice to do that.
Right. I like that. Very nice.
So Jenny, Patarawadi, I don't know if I messed that up, is on the call. Hello. And Jenny said, very helpful. I'm not sure what to anymore, but anyway. And Jenny says, sounds like is a good way out. It seems to show compassion to a child, being mindful of the community around you. Very nice. Thanks. You're welcome.
Yes.
Glad it's resonating with people and giving you some tools and ideas.
Yes. So we talked about Sophie and such. There are some other questions here. Parents and friends use language such as cheeky monkey or naughty girl, and if you keep doing that, I'll get angry. So how to encourage them to say more appropriate things. And I think you already talked about that. It's really that modeling about and saying, sounds like.
It sounds like, when they're using a label, for example, cheeky monkey, you could say, oh, it sounds like they don't appreciate you climbing on their furniture. Yeah. And then you can say, are you a cheeky monkey or are you a tiger? I don't know. Just like try and not even put any labels.
Or just their name. They're calling them their first name.
You can say, my name, I'm not cheeky monkey. Hello, Anne.
I actually have an anecdote about that, of how it's important to call children by their names. When I was first working in the classroom and doing my internship and being a student teacher, I called a little girl Sweetie. I said, oh, Sweetie, would you like something? And she looked at me very, very assertive and said, I'm not Sweetie. My name is Jenny, or whatever. And it was just like, yes, you are right. Who am I to call you Sweetie? So very, very important to call them.
Also, for those people who don't know about labels and why we try to avoid labels, maybe that's useful to talk about too. Sure, because I mean, I'm assuming that people understand why we try to avoid labels, but do you want to cover that?
Well, to me, it's just the idea of why give them such a small point of their personality or such, and that labels tend to stay for a lot longer, and they will appropriate themselves that label, such as naughty girl. Then they will think of themselves as a naughty girl, which it's not because they did something, they misbehave in a moment in a day, that they become a naughty girl. So very important to be careful of the language that we use to describe our children, so that they don't feel that that is really what they are.
And also, I think that's exactly right. And like in Montessori, we also try and see the child with fresh eyes every day. So if they're always the naughty child, you know, they're locked into a category. And some days they can be really easy, and some days we can be hard. We're all just a lot of those things.
Yes.
So labels just pigeonhole you into one specific thing, and it can end up being self-fulfilling prophecy. Like a shy child becomes shy because they've heard always, oh, she's a bit shy. So instead you can just say, oh, you're finding it, you need a bit of time to warm up today. That can be how she feels today.
Exactly. And I love the reminder of every day is a new day with children. They are constantly evolving. So to really be careful and mindful to, you know, leave what happened a few minutes ago, a few hours ago, the day before, leave it alone and receive the child every day as a new child, an adult in the making. Very important.
And the last thing about labels is that even good labels like, oh, she's such a good girl, oh, she's such a clever child, is a really hard label to live up to. So you can feel stressed about, oh, what if I then don't do well in the next test as an older child? Or how am I ever going to meet this very, you know, big picture that my parents have set up for me? So that's another
very
kind
important
of label-y kind of thing as well.
What about trying not to use bribing type of language, such as you can, or
you can do this,
done.
Yes. Done that.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually, to be honest, mostly it's in the tone. For example, a child goes to the cracker box and gets a cracker out, but they've still got a cracker that they're halfway through. And instead of saying no, or you can, you know, instead I just say, oh yeah, you can have another cracker when you finish this one. And I just say it in a very neutral tone. So I'm actually saying the same thing, but I'm not using it as a bribe. Or for example, you want to go to the playground and I want to go to the supermarket. And a bribe would be, okay, well, we'll go to the playground if you're good at the supermarket, yeah? But you can have the same thing happen. Like we used to go to the supermarket and we used to go to the playground because that's a nice thing for us to do. So like, you guys want to go to the supermarket? You guys want to go to the playground probably, and I want to go to the supermarket. So which one should we do first? And it's not that, yeah, because if they're badly behaved at the supermarket, means we don't even get to the playground, like really? So it's really stopping that interdependency, like the bribes versus punishment. And yeah, maybe we should give a quick description why we really avoid bribes and punishment in Montessori as well.
Well, it's just, you know, for one, they have oftentimes bribe have nothing to do with the actual situation, which is something to me that's really important. Like there's, you know, not you know, misbehaving at the supermarket and not going to the park. What does that have to do? You know, you need to go to the park. You need to use your energy, and you need fresh air and such. And we need to go to the supermarket for other things. So keeping it that they make sense to each other.
So again, and I would just keep modeling other options. It's like, yeah, if people are bribing your child, you could say, oh, it sounds like they think that the only reason you'll go to the toilet is if you need a sticker. Do you need to use the toilet? Just kind of take it back to what it is that they're wanting to say. So you just have to keep translating for everybody. Basically, we need to be dictionaries.
Yes, we do.
Catalina says, she's talking about why not to use labels. A small aspect. What if you like how cute it is and want to say as her mother, cutie? Then I would say, I think that's really cute. But as opposed to saying, you are so cute. Yeah, I would say it is cute, or describe what you find cute as opposed to labeling her cute all the time.
Right. It might not be the child itself that's cute, but maybe what she's wearing that day is cute, or an action that she did is cute. It's just the overuse of labels. You know, so once in a while to tell somebody that they're pretty or good looking or fashionable, whatever, it's great. But to always say, oh, you're always so fashionable, again, you're putting them in a situation where they feel that they always have to be. So important to differentiate with the overall label for that one person or that one child, as opposed to momentarily. if that makes sense.
And following on from that, Naveen asks, like, what about like we only get dessert if we finish our dinner? And I think that's really interesting because French people, and you grew up in France, you know, you have dessert. In fact, your mum probably makes the nicest dessert if you don't like what's on main course offering. So you have dessert regardless. And really with food, I mean, maybe we should do a topic on food. Should we do that next time?
Maybe that'd be a good one. Yes.
Food is really interesting.
Yes.
You know, like that we are responsible for what we put on the plate and where they're going to eat and what they're eating. But actually how much they put into their mouth, that's up to them, you know, like just don't make a big deal about it. Serve 3 healthy meals a day, cut away snacks if it's being a big issue. And mostly, yeah.
And to me, you know, to me also, and we'll talk more on the next show about food, but dessert for me is always, you know, a fruit or a yogurt, or, you know, here being in France is a lot of cheese. So that's all healthy too. So, you know, why deprive them of that just because they're not finishing what they have in front of them before that. So I'm okay.
Yeah, like a really good, okay, we're going to definitely do food in October, Naveen. I mean, Catalina, yes. I mean, he also likes the food topic. There's also another one that Amy's come up with. Any advice on talking to your parents about using negative reinforcement? My parents want us to teach our 2-year-old the feeling of embarrassment, shame. You're shaking your head. Sorry, yeah, that's true. Oh, for example, there's an example here too. My daughter would be more eager to use the potty if she knew she should be embarrassed using diapers.
But that's the embarrassment is something I think we put upon our children. They're not feeling embarrassed if they're, you know, fine using a diaper for a while. You know, toileting, food, sleep, toileting. I mean, I know we've talked about this before. These are 3 things that we can't force our children to do. So they will come around to it on their own, and will, you know, all we can do is set up the environment, set up the routines, and have the patience for it. But it's shaming them into doing it is not respectful, and making them feel embarrassed for something is not respectful. So
you could acknowledge their feelings. Oh, you think it's a good idea that she might feel embarrassed if she's still wearing diapers. I'm not sure that she feels embarrassment yet, but if I notice she is, I will definitely say, oh, you feel embarrassed that you're still wearing diapers. But I guess just acknowledge, thank you for that request, and I'll think about that. But,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's also that you could explain that we would rather her be in charge of her own toileting experience. We're not going to shame her for pooing in her pants or something like this. It's just an accident, and yeah, we move on.
Yeah,
that's another thing as well.
Because and that's the thing. I mean, toileting is another. It's such an important milestone of independence for the child that it really is something that they want to do. So it's just about giving them the proper tools to do it. But to try to, you know, embarrass them or make them feel shameful about it is not going to be helpful. And then for your parents, you know, this thing about reinforcing embarrassment and shame. I mean, before 2, the child is, you know, we've mentioned this before, the child before 3 is an unconscious learner. So these great sentiments and such they're not even aware of it. And it's kind of way too young to even be thinking of you know, wanting to teach them that.
Yeah, so maybe scientifically they're not feeling embarrassment yet unless we bring it to their attention. But yeah, it's definitely something that might come up in future. She may feel when she sees peers going to the toilet that she also wants to, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Morphin has a really interesting comment about the word embarrassed. She says her 3-year-old asks her what embarrassed means when she hears it in a book. And I find it really tricky to explain it to her. I don't think I want her to know what embarrassed means. And I think I would be very honest with kids about pretty much any question they throw at me. If I start not talking about embarrassment, it's like nothing's off limits for me. I'd say, oh, that means when people feel a bit awkward. And then I would that's all I would say about it. I wouldn't make a big deal about it. because just like I have to have really weird conversations around Amsterdam. Yeah, there is someone in the window who's not wearing many clothes, and I have to explain what a prostitute is to a 7-year-old in very simple but ways. I just don't kind of push topics away. I just am very frank, normal about it, and keep it as simple as their age allows, if that makes sense.
No, totally. I don't know why I'm not seeing those comments. Interesting.
Okay.
Oh. So
should we go back to our questions from Anne?
Yes.
I feel like we've lost our track a little bit.
Yes. How to be consistent when your partner prefers consequence for bad or naughty behavior and you prefer not sanctioning.
Yeah, so I think that that's really tricky. If you have a different approach to disciplining your child, that is one thing that I would really try and, okay, do you have 20 minutes, I would say to your partner, let's plan to talk about this. And then 5 minutes, you listen to them, 5 minutes, you reflect back, 5 minutes you talk, and then 5 minutes they reflect back. And maybe you would come to me to see, okay, well, he's worried that by my more non-sanctioning approach that she gets away with whatever she wants. I'm calming her down. What we're missing then from that piece is showing them how you make amends at the end. So once your child's calmed down from their tantrum, they've done something inappropriate, you show them how to make amends. Otherwise, there is no follow through. You're not helping them become responsible in the long term. And you want to, like the positive discipline, give them opportunities to find solutions to problems. So we've done a lot of episodes on positive discipline. So there's definitely things you could watch together to see if there's a way that you can find that works for both of you. Okay, you really want to say something's naughty, and I really find that might, affect, she wants to sneak around us because she's worried about us getting angry. So how can we find a way that I can do it this way and you can do it that way? And as long as the basic principle is kind of the same, in that we're not going to shame, we're not going to blame, we're not going to punish, but we're going to have a logical follow through once they've calmed down, then whether he's a bit more strict in how he does it and you're a bit more, I'm going to find a way, then I think it's mostly fine. You want to be big picture similar, and then how each parent does it. And that's, I think, even your grandparents and all your friends, then no one can replicate you. You don't want to have clones. You want your child to understand that everyone's different. And that's the beauty of the world. This is a really boring place. It'd be so boring to talk to myself all the time. I promise you, I'm in my head all the time. It's really boring. I love chatting to Jeanne-Marie, and I like chatting to Jenny and Catalina and Amy and people who think all these different things. Like Morven's made me think, why do I like embarrassment? Why do I think that's okay?
Yeah. No, but it's interesting because, I mean, I'll be perfectly frank and honest. Even with all the work that I do with families, I am challenged sometimes with my parenting partner on how to, work with our children, and it's great. I mean, I love the topic of this because it's true. It's like, I just have to accept that that's their opinion and I have mine, and that I can model different ways, but I can't expect them to change, and I have to accept that is the relationship that he is wanting to have with his child.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes is the hard part as a parent, is to kind of let go of wanting to control relationships that our child is going to have. We can only give what we have, and then the grandparents and the aunts and uncles and other parents, that's the relationship that they're establishing with that child. So yeah.
Great. The last one is about how the child of 2 says no a lot, and she won't listen and puts her hands over her ears when the dad's explaining something, and they don't want to listen, and she's smiling at the same time, and he wants to say you're being rude, and so how to be gentle and get cooperation. So again, I think I would just translate for the dad, like if he's really getting into a control battle. It sounds like dad's really frustrated and you really don't want to listen either, you don't want to have a bath right now. And I would just translate for both of them and kind of mediate like you would between 2 siblings who are disagreeing on something. That's something that comes up with me. I mean, and then you model other ways of getting her cooperation at other times. You can give them a book to read. Sometimes people find it useful to watch workshops together because that's something that like her father might do, or get them to watch the Montessori show. and hear us wise women,
and to remember that a child of 2 is developing their will, that this is part of the exploration, is to push the buttons and see the limits, that this is what their mission is. So not to take offense and not to take it personally. They're not being rude. They're being an explorer and just trying to make sense of this world and such. So to just have that patience and that compassion for them.
And also, again, going back to not correcting their partner, because I guess you're saying, the child's saying no, and then you're telling the partner, don't tell them off right now, is just you're, again, modeling the incorrect thing. So I would just keep practicing, and you get it wrong all the time. And then you can just, the ultimate do-over is to say, oh, what I should have said is this. I'm really sorry that when it went wrong. Yeah?
Yes.
And Amy said that she asked her partner to watch the show with her tonight, and he's sitting right here next to me. Oh, well, we're very curious to hear how that's going, and hopefully you guys will have nice, peaceful conversations after this. There's a few questions that have come in the chat box that are not related, but as we've got to the end of our list of questions that came in before the call, maybe we can just give really 1-minute answers to them.
Yes, but I'm not seeing them, so you're going to have to read them.
Sure. It says, does Montessori, this is from Jenny, avoid using storybooks that are using animals that talk or are animated in a funny way?
Yes.
Would you like to answer that one? I've done a lot of talking tonight.
So yes, Montessori, we do, before the age of 6, focus on realistic and concrete information. So best is to find picture books that are as realistic as possible, that are beautiful artwork and such, or photography. But the child before 6 has a hard time telling the difference between reality and fantasy. So we really want to give them the concrete and reality and good information, and from that will spring up their own imagination. I think there's oftentimes a misunderstanding about that we're not letting them be imaginative, but imagination comes from within, so we are letting them do so on their own.
Okay. Yeah, I think that based in reality is the most important thing to look for with books for children under 6, and you can get to things like crazy fairy tales and those things when they understand what abstraction is. But otherwise, they think it's real, these scary things. So, yeah, also.
Yes.
And Catalina asks regarding the toilet, I wonder if a 9-month-old baby really fussing when changing a diaper is her call of independence. Sorry, a little off topic.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we can do a whole show on toileting as well.
You can see how much long food takes, and if food doesn't take up the whole thing, then toileting, sleep, all of those practical things are definitely things that we get lots of questions about in class.
Yes, definitely.
Jenny, most welcome. She says, thank you very much, especially pointing out the imagination aspect. And Anne says, thanks so much. And sadly, funny, ironic, because that is probably exactly what I do. I tell my partner not to speak to my daughter in that way, and thereby only modeling criticism. Good point.
Exactly.
So Little Running Farm, we will deal with the cooperation another day. That's a whole big topic, and one that I really can't answer in 1 minute, which is, her question was how to deal with a preschooler who's not cooperating when you're tired and patience is almost gone. I think we did do cooperation a long time ago, did we?
Yes, maybe. We try to put the topics in the titles now of the shows.
If I can find the link, I'll put the link in the meantime, so you don't have to wait a month, Little Learning Farm. But otherwise, we'll definitely add that, and we can address it next time.
So, Simone, I would love for you to share a little bit about what's been going on in your world.
I have had the craziest 2 weeks, because over the summer I had a chance to write a book that I have been thinking about for 2 years. Yay! And it's been welling in my head for a long time, so it really came very quickly. And also, without children for 10 days, you can get a lot done. So I really was in a very happy place writing my book, and I put it onto Kickstarter, and we've already sold 888 copies at last count, which is crazy, in 12 days. And it closes on Sunday. So if you want to have a look at that, I'll drop the link to the Kickstarter where you can pre-order your books, which will be available in February next year. And it goes through everything from a short introduction to Montessori, what toddlers, it's about toddlers, the Montessori toddler, the book is, I don't know if I mentioned that. It's about like, what are toddlers' needs, what are they trying to communicate, and seeing toddlers in different ways. And then it goes through the activities you can create for them, how you can set up your home, all the practical things like eating, sleeping, and toileting, how we can work with others, which is like what we talked about today. And we even have some examples of some real stories and a whole bunch more that I can't even remember. So yeah, worth checking out if you've got toddlers in your house. And then Jeanne-Marie's got something exciting coming up as well. Your Be the Best Parent You Can Be.
Yes, this is my fourth interview series that I'm doing that will be starting October 2nd. So I will be sharing the link in the chat, and then we'll also be sharing it in the email that we send out with the replay. But basically, when you sign up, you will receive every day a new interview that I've done with a parenting or child development expert over the span of the 24 days. And it's going to be wonderful. I have Tina Payne Bryson, for example, who wrote with Dan Siegel the Whole Brain Child and No Drama Discipline that we refer to a lot, and that was a great conversation. And then plenty of other wonderful experts. So that's Be the Best Parent You Can Be, season 4, and I will share the link with you, or otherwise look on my Facebook page on Voilà Montessori.
I was just about to say that they're always brilliant, and I learn myself a lot every time I listen to your series, because this is now the fourth one.
Fourth one, yes.
And Jenny's posted in the group as well. Be the Best Parent You Can Be is an amazing event. I met amazing professionals through this. Thank you. And it's all of it's free, so it's there's just no reason not to sign up. It's brilliant.
Yes. All righty. Well, thank you everybody for being here.
It says thank you to Catalina. Thank you for answering. Jenny says, yay, Amy, is he the only man participating? The Little Learning Farm says, thank you, Amy. Robeck said, thanks for this topic today. And Katka says, yay, be the best parent you can be. Cannot wait to see it. So on that note, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Yes. And we'll talk to you in October.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.